It's amazing because you even have, I was stunned by something Ukrainian commander Zelenskyy just said this week. I mean, he said he was in one of his master's homes in the UK, in Britain, where he was meeting with Ukrainian troops, of course, who are being trained there in the UK. And he told the troops there that there's almost no hope for your survival and that you need to go to the front lines basically knowing you're going to die.
So in this lame duck session by Joe Biden after Kamala Harris lost the 2024 election to Donald Trump, and Joe Biden is basically finishing out his last 2 months to ever be a president. I mean, congratulations, you made it to be a president after 40, 50, 65 years of trying. Whatever, dude. But Tucker Carlson is giving his assessment in who he believes is actually running the White House. And ironically, his take is not too far separated from my own take that I've given on the channel in the past, in that it's one of two things and maybe both. First, they're basically trying to make Donald Trump's job in delivering his promise to end the war in Ukraine on day one as hard as possible and potentially even start World War III in the process, or they are projecting that Donald Trump will actually be able to end that war here as soon as he takes over, hopefully, right? And they basically just want to kill as many people as possible, which is a possibility in my mind, and which is something that I've mentioned in the past, like I said. And it all basically boils down to just straight up evil. These people that are running the White House, in my opinion, are pretty much just evil. And, you know, a lot of people were praying for Donald Trump to win this 2024 election. And thankfully, Donald Trump prevailed, and Americans will hopefully prevail over the next 4 years. But let's go ahead and check out this conversation because it was really interesting to me. And I'm loving the path that Tucker Carlson has taken ever since he was fired from Fox News. And let's go ahead, like I said.
And I mean, that's quite a prep talk. And I mean, so for this like vicious proxy war, kill or be killed. And this is the truth of it. You know, over 1 million Ukrainians dead now, or permanently maimed, an entire generation of young men wiped out, a country destroyed. And they're still trying to sell this thing. And then, of course, over the past few days, we've seen the madness that is unfolding in the White House, allowing long-range missiles to be used from Ukraine at NATO's direction. Make no mistake, anyone watching this knows that Ukrainians don't even know how to use these missiles. It's NATO that's doing it, of course, and attacking inside of Russia. And now, and then with add on top of that, the Biden administration now has okayed anti-personnel mines to be used, something they've long said absolutely we won't use. These are basically a lot of like the same pedal mines that are thrown into the ground in Donetsk and the Donbass region, and children go to the playgrounds and they find these little pedal mines that look like leaves. They pick them up and their arms are blown off or they're killed. And the Biden administration was absolutely against this. This was their stance. And now suddenly, within the past week, all of this has changed. So who the hell is running the White House? I mean, you've got, again, I know you're humble about this, but you've got amazing sources there. Like, Biden is not, who is running the White House? Like, who is our de facto president? Is it Antony Blinken right now? Is it Jake Sullivan? Who is doing this?
Well, if you'd asked me yesterday morning, I would have said Tony Blinken, who has been running it since the beginning. But now I would say Satan, because I really think that you've got, dark forces in charge. I mean, there's no justification for using anti-personnel mines in this conflict, which can't hope to be solved with anti-personnel mines, resolved in any way. The only effect of that move is to kill innocents, period. That's it. That's the only effect. And they know that. And so they're doing it anyway, because killing is the point. So it's evil. I think we should say that. I don't think it's a matter of defending democracy. The president of Ukraine is not elected. He's a dictator. He literally passed his term and kept serving. He's a dictator. And that country's shut down a Christian denomination, put priests in jail. Like, how many more markers of dictatorship do you need to call it what it is, which is totalitarian?
And quickly, before we continue, I want to just read you a couple of these details that are in this article from Daily Mail. Tucker Carlson stuns podcast host as he makes wild claim about who's really running Biden's White House. Tucker Carlson stunned a podcast host as he revealed he believes Satan himself is really running Joe Biden's White House. The former Fox News host said that the recent move by Washington to provide the Ukrainians with landmines to use against Vladimir Putin's troops changed his mind. Carlson said he previously would have believed Secretary of State Blinken. Okay, we just heard that. And I want to jump forward here because Biden also gave Ukraine permission to fire American-made ATACMS missiles, which have a range of 190 miles, into Russia last week. Those are the long-range missiles that Biden approved. And keep in mind, Biden he's in his last couple months of this presidency. So he's basically making decisions that could cause World War III potentially, certainly cause a lot of death and harm to these countries over here, to these people over here, and maybe even possibly innocent people in the process on his way out. You know, it's completely absurd that a president, it's making me think that this, lame duck session when a president loses an election and still serves for another 2 months is unnecessary. It's something that we need to get fixed, right? Like almost to the point where somebody wins the election and they're inaugurated and it's all, figured out within the next couple weeks or something like that, because this is just too long. It allows Biden to do too much damage. Just go out like he doesn't care. And I expect a bunch of pardons to come out here probably next month in December as the deadline for him to leave approaches. But Ukraine used some of the weapons to bomb Tula, a city with one of Russia's biggest ammunition production industries about 100 miles south of Moscow. The landmines provided by Washington are not allowed to be used near civilians and won't have the same issue as the older landmines still killing people around the world years after conflicts ended. The mines are non-persistent and become inert after a preset period. They require a battery to detonate and will not explode once the battery runs out. So, I don't know, however long the batteries last, I guess. Ukraine has used NATO-made anti-tank mines for much of the war, but Biden said he would not give Ukraine anti-personnel mines again until last week's U-turn. So, another huge decision that Biden has made in the same light that I mentioned earlier. Carlson, who has perpetuated unfounded Russian claims about Ukraine since before the invasion even began, then lashed out at President Vladimir Zelenskyy, which we'll watch here in the next part, I believe. But I wanted to finish with this right here before we get into the video again. Instead, the Ukrainian parliament voted to delay the election by... Oh, wait, I skipped too far. The president of Ukraine is not elected. He's a dictator. He literally passed his term and kept serving, he said. And for more details on that, Zelensky's term as president ended on May 20th. But as martial law was declared in 2022, when the invasion began, the election wasn't held. So that means that instead, the Ukrainian parliament voted to delay the election by 90 days several times, most recently putting it off until February 7th. Ukrainian opposition parties largely have not opposed leaving him in power, citing the extreme difficulty of conducting a fair election while under attack and with so many citizens displaced from their homes or under occupation. And I'll add, or off fighting at the front lines, because Ukraine is basically sending everyone to the front lines to die.
And you see what's happening with Trump right now and these dark forces that are surrounding him. I think you tweeted the other day, I think you said something like, the prayers of good people got Donald Trump elected 2 weeks ago. Wars with Russia and Iran are the counterattack. And I know you don't post a lot on X. Like when you do,
Never.
Yeah, I mean, but it's very thoughtful and it's for a purpose, right? So when I saw that, I just shook my head thinking, my God, well, if this is the counterattack, who's the counterattack from? I mean, this is some dark force that's really trying to undermine this Trump administration, right? I mean, and it's so evil. I mean, have you ever seen an administration like this where
no,
leaving office, you try to drag the next administration into a world war. I mean, I get what the Clintons did. Leaving office, they removed the W's from the keyboards for George W. Bush. Like, you know, like
I remember that.
This is totally different.
Well, I'm hardly a theologian. I mean, I'm the opposite of a theologian. I don't understand really anything about theology and really don't care to. But I just have noticed through years of observation that there is a kind of dualism isn't exactly the right word, but there is a war in the unseen world between light and darkness, good and bad. It's been described by every civilization since the beginning of time. So I think we can assume it's real. And you do see that, you know, expressions of good, manifestations of good are sometimes followed, and vice versa, by outbursts of evil. And I don't think there's any other way to read that. And by counterattack in that tweet, which I wrote this morning, I don't have my Twitter password, so I, you know, sent it to my office and said, please tweet this. Thought of it in my sauna this morning, but I was just brooding on it and saying prayers about it. And I was like, I think Trump, I don't know that Trump's like a super faithful Christian or anything, but I know a lot of very faithful Christians prayed for Trump. And I think it had an effect. I think it was the determinative effect. I really believe that. And the counterattack is promoting war for its own sake without any promise of any kind of meaningful victory. Truly war for the sake of killing people, totally unadorned. No one's even pretending that we're going to get democracy or something if these missiles kill Putin. I mean, there's no argument even. It's like, no, we're killing because we can. That is the definition of evil. And if I could just say one thing that does distress me about American society is that not enough time has been spent thinking about how violence is bad. Violence is bad. It just is. I'm sorry. And a lot of people that I like, I've worked with, have defended violence over the years. And I think self-defense is legitimate. But killing people for the sake of killing them because you don't like them or you think they represent something bad, that's evil. I just want to be clear. Violence is bad. And by the way, if you're a Christian, it's not allowed. It's super obvious you don't need to be a theologian to glean that from the New Testament. You're not allowed to do that. Jesus is being hauled away to be tortured to death on false charges. And, you know, one of his guys raises a sword against one of the people carrying him away, dragging him off to get tortured to death. And Jesus scolds the man with the sword, who's doing it on his behalf, says, put that away. And so we are not allowed to commit violence against people, except I would argue maybe under self-defense, you know, in a self-defense scenario, but certainly not so we can feel powerful or because we're annoyed or because we don't like a certain president or something. It's like, it's nuts. And because not enough people say that, it goes unquestioned. But it is bad. And it doesn't, I've seen a lot of violence, you know, a lot. And I don't know, probably more than Toria Nuland has seen. So I think people who've seen it are not quite as enthusiastic about it. I mean, I was never in the military, but I've, you know, been around that stuff when people get hurt. And it's like, no, this is not good at all. And anyone who thinks it's good is a freak.
And I wanted to build on Tucker's statement there that a lot of people prayed that Donald Trump win this election. It doesn't end there. We need to continue praying for Donald Trump's safety and for him to be guided by the Holy Spirit, and so that he can make the right decisions over these next 4 years that benefits all of us greatly and reduces the amount of death around the world, right? Not only that, I'd like to challenge everyone that's made it this far in the video to have a look at Jesus and how he spent his life and the things that happened to him in his time. And with that, I think I'll just go ahead and wrap it up there. I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving, and I'll see you guys in the next video.